In the late 1970s, rock music was becoming louder, faster and more theatrical. Punk was exploding across Britain, disco dominated the clubs, and image seemed almost as important as music. Then four quiet musicians appeared with no costumes, no wild stage act and no interest in behaving like typical rock stars. They called themselves Dire Straits, and within a few years, they became one of the biggest bands in the world. The group formed in London in 1977 with Mark Knopfler on lead guitar and vocals, his younger brother David on rhythm guitar, John Illsley on bass, and Pick Withers on drums. Their name reportedly reflected their situation. They had very little money and were struggling to survive. What separated them from other new bands was Mark Knopfler's guitar playing. Instead of attacking the strings with a pick, he usually played with his fingers, creating a clean, fluid sound that could be gentle one moment and explosive the next. Their breakthrough began with something almost nobody else would have noticed. One rainy night, Knopfler entered a nearly empty pub and watched a small jazz band performing for almost no audience. At the end, the singer proudly announced that they were the Sultans of Swing. The grand name seemed strangely funny in such an ordinary setting, and Knopfler turned the scene into a song about musicians who played because they loved the music, not because they expected fame. Dire Straits recorded a demo and sent it to BBC radio presenter Charlie Gillett, hoping for advice. Gillett liked Sultans of Swing enough to play it on the radio, helping the band secure a record contract. When the song became an international hit, listeners immediately recognized Knopfler's conversational voice, vivid storytelling, and unforgettable guitar solo. At a time when many bands were trying to shock audiences, Dire Straits became famous by sounding controlled and completely different. Albums such as Communicate, Making Movies and Love Over Gold expanded their sound. Romeo and Juliet turned heartbreak into a modern tragedy. Tunnel of Love built toward one of Knopfler's most emotional guitar endings, while the nearly 7-minute Private Investigations became a major British hit. But creative pressure was growing. David Knopfler left during the recording of Making Movies, and the lineup continued to change as Mark took greater control over the band's musical direction. Then came the album that changed everything. Released in 1985, Brothers in Arms transformed Dire Straits from a successful rock group into a worldwide phenomenon. Recorded during the early digital era, Brothers in Arms became closely associated with the rise of the compact disc and eventually sold more than 30 million copies worldwide. Its biggest hit, Money for Nothing, began in a New York appliance store. Knopfler overheard a worker watching MTV and complaining that musicians appeared to earn money without doing real work. Knopfler wrote down the man's comments and built the song around that point of view. Sting, who happened to be near the recording studio in Montserrat, contributed the famous I Want My MTV introduction. The song reached #1 in America and won the Grammy Award for Best Rock Performance by a duo or group with vocal. Its revolutionary computer-animated video also became one of the defining images of early MTV. But Brothers in Arms was more than a collection of hits. The title track was a dark anti-war song inspired by the Falklands conflict. Your Latest Trick displayed the band's jazz influence, while Walk of Life became one of their most cheerful and recognizable songs. Dire Straits could sound intimate through headphones and enormous inside a stadium. The success also came at a cost. The Brothers in Arms tour played to more than 3.5 million people. Dire Straits were now surrounded by exactly the kind of massive fame Knopfler had never seemed to want. After the tour, the band stepped away from the spotlight. They returned in 1991 with On Every Street and launched another enormous world tour. But the experience was physically and mentally exhausting. After their final concerts in 1992, the group gradually came to an end. By 1995, Dire Straits were officially finished. Mark Knopfler continued with solo albums, film scores and collaborations, choosing a quieter career built around songwriting rather than superstardom. Dire Straits never became a nostalgia machine and never launched a major reunion. In 2018, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Their story is unusual because they achieved almost everything a band could achieve: global hits, stadium tours, awards, and one of the best-selling albums in history, without ever fitting the usual image of rock stars. Their power came from restraint. Mark Knopfler did not need to play the most notes. He only needed to play the right ones. And that may be why Dire Straits still sound timeless. They did not chase fashion. They did not depend on spectacle. They told stories, served the songs, and allowed the guitar to speak. In an industry built on noise, Dire Straits became legendary by knowing exactly when to hold back.